Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today thank you so much for stopping by. In this video we'll be making a Milkmaid dress. So this dress is an off-shoulder dress, so I'm going to take out 6 inches before I start taking my point. So I'm going to take out 6 inches and I'll mark the distance from my shoulder to my chest line, which is 8 inches. I'm going to rule a straight line across that point. Still taking out the 6 inches, I'm going to mark the distance from my shoulder to my under bust point, which is 13 inches. I'll indicate that with a point. I'll also mark the distance from my shoulder to my half length, which is also my waistline. I'm going to make that 17 inches, 1 inch for seam allowance. It's supposed to be 16 inches, but I added 1 inch to it. So I'll go ahead and label my lines. I have my chest line, my UBL, and my waistline. And half of my shoulder measurement is 8 inches, so I'm going to reduce it by 1.5 inch. Reason because the sleeves of this dress is going to have an elastic band and I don't want it to be too loose, so by the time I add the elastic band to the sleeve, it's going to cover up for the 1.5 inch. On my chest line, I'll place my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll place that. On my under bust line, I'll place my under bust circumference divided by 4. I'll indicate that with a dot. And on my waistline, I'll place my waist measurement divided by 4, and I'll also indicate that with a dot. After doing that, I'm going to connect all these dots together. After doing that, I'll go ahead and add 1.5 inches for stitching allowance. I'll also connect the dots together. Like I said before, I'll be reducing my shoulder measurement by 1.5 inch. So instead of placing 8 inches, I'm going to place 6.5 inches, and I'll just use my ruler to cover out my armhole like this. The next thing I'm going to do is to go up from my under bust line by 1 inch. I'll indicate that with a point. On the other end, I'll also go up by 1 inch. I'll indicate that with a point. I'll go ahead and take in my dart. So my bust band measurement, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement, is 4 inches. I'll place that on my chest line, and on my UBL line, I'll connect the 2 dots into a straight line. After doing that, I'm going to use my free hand to connect from the 1 inch on my center front to meet the line on my UBL line. I'll also connect from the other end like this to meet the 1 inch on the other end. I'll also go ahead and connect from this armhole area to meet the 1 inch like this. After doing that, I'll go ahead and cut. So we are done with the drafting of this front. So this is just for the front. We are going to draft for the back separately. I'll go ahead and cut like this. So just look at where I'm cutting so you know where to cut. So guys, after cutting, we are going to work on our cup in order to form the Milkmaid chests. Yeah, so we'll be doing the slash and spread method. This is my cup. I'm going to go ahead and measure 1 inch apart on the cup. So from the center front, I'll measure 1 inch. I'll indicate that with a point. From that point, I'll measure another 1 inch. I'll keep doing that till I get to the end of the pattern paper. So for me to get a straight line, I'll still measure 1 inch apart on the top part of this pattern paper, and I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect all the dots into a straight line. After doing that, I'm going to number it so that I'll not get confused, because we are going to slash through all these lines. So I have from number 1 to 7. I'm going to go ahead and slash through all these lines. After doing that, I'm going to introduce a new pattern paper. So we are going to spread all these numbers on another new pattern paper. So after doing that, this is what I have. So I'm going to bring in the new pattern paper and I'll rule a straight line on the new pattern paper. Make sure you rule a straight line so that everything will be accurate. So after doing that, I'm going to start placing all these piece of paper on this new pattern paper. So I'm going to place number 1 like this, making sure that the line that I have on number 1 is sitting on the line that I have on this new pattern paper. I hope that you understand. That way everything is going to be accurate. So I'm going to tape the number 1 down and I'm going to spread it apart by 1 inch. So I'll take 1 inch from, I'll measure 1 inch from number 1 and I'll place number 2 like this. I'll also go ahead and tape number 2 down and I'll measure 1 inch again. So I'm doing it 1 inch apart. I'll keep spreading like this till I get to number 7. So guys, after spreading, this is what I have. So I'll use my marker to trace out everything. You can go ahead and cut, but I like to trace it out first before cutting. So after cutting out, this is our new cup. This is what we are going to use for our cup. So we are going to draft the back. So for the back, we'll first of all take our zipper allowance of 1.5 inch. I'll indicate that with a point and I'll connect into a straight line. After doing that, I'm going to mark my points. So like we did for the front, I'll take out 6 inches and I'm going to mark the distance from my shoulder to my chest line, which is 8 inches. I'll also mark the distance from my shoulder to my under bust line, which is 13 inches, and I'll mark the distance from my shoulder to my half length, which is also my waistline. I'll mark 17 inches. I'll go ahead and rule a straight line across all these dots. So like we did for the front piece, I'm going to go in by 6.5 inches, and on my chest line, I'll take my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll place that. On my UBL line, I'll take my under bust circumference divided by 4. I'll also place that. And on my waistline, I'll take my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll place that, and then I'll connect all these dots together. After doing that, I'll go ahead and add 1.5 inch for stitching allowance, and I'll also connect the dots together. After doing that, the next thing I'll do is to connect my armhole using my ruler like this. The next thing I'll do is to adjust my zipper area. So I already have 1.5 inch for the zipper allowance. So on the waistline, I'm going to take out 1 inch and I'll connect like this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. So this is the pattern we'll be using for the back. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and label this the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut on my fabric. So I'll be using this silk fabric for the dress, and it's 3 yards of fabric. So I've gone ahead to use my pattern to cut on my fabric, and this is what I have. I also went ahead to add allowance all the way around. So for the center of my cup, I added 1 inch because I'll be folding it in. And for the upper part of the cup also, I added 1 inch because I'll also be folding it in. And for the sides, I added 1/4 inch allowance. So for the cup, I have 2 pieces of fabric. For the main bodies, I also have 2 pieces, but I went ahead to cut the main bodies on fold. So the center front is on fold, and I have the lining and the main piece, and the back piece is also 2. So let's go ahead and work on our cup. I'll place the 2 cups together, right sides facing each other, and I'll go ahead and sew using the 1 inch that I left for allowance. I'll sew on a straight line. So make sure you don't sew too much. We are just sewing to join these 2 cups together because we are going to gather the base. So we need the 2 cups to be joined together. So I'm just going to sew on a straight line using the 1 inch seam allowance that I left on the cup. After sewing, I'll turn it over in form of a bias, and I'll also sew on a straight line. So let me show you guys what I mean. So remember, this is our center front. So the 1 inch that I left, I folded it down and I ran a straight stitch on my chest line to meet the base of the cup. What I'll do now is to create a channel for my rope, the rope on the chest to pass through. So remember I left 1 inch on the upper part of my cup, so I'm going to fold the 1 inch and I'll run a straight stitch on it. So I've gone ahead to do that, and this is what I have. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rope that I'll be passing through this channel. So guys, I've gone ahead to cut out my ropes. The wideness of this rope is 2 inches and the length is 26 inches. So I'm going to fold them right sides facing each other. I'll sew on the straight line and I'll turn inside out. So guys, after doing that, this is what I have. I also went ahead to run a gathered stitch on the base of this cup, so please go ahead and do that, because after passing in the rope through the channel, we are going to gather the base of the cup. I'm going to go ahead and pass this rope through the channels that I made. After passing it through, I'll just use my pin to hold it down, and then I'm going to stitch them down. After passing my ropes through the channel, I'm going to take one end of the rope and I'm going to gather like this. So go ahead and run a gather stitch and then pick one end of the rope and pull gently to form your gathers. So guys, I'm done gathering and this is what I have. I'm going to keep this aside and I'll bring the main bodice. So for the main bodice, like I said, I have two pieces. One is going to serve as the main piece and the other one is going to serve as the lining. I'm going to open it up like this and I'll bring in my cup. So we are going to pin the cup. Make sure that the cup will fit inside the cup space that we have on the main bodice. So I'm going to turn it over like this, right sides facing each other, and I'm going to pin the cup to the main bodice. I'll start from the center. I'll pin the center and I'll pin the sides. So if you're a beginner, pin one and make sure you get it. Go ahead and sew it. Once you see that it's okay, then you go ahead and pin the other one and sew. So just pin, make sure that the cup fits into the main bodice, and then go ahead and sew. And for the back, I don't have enough fabric to cut lining for the back, but if you do, cut out 4 pieces, use 2 for the main bodice and 2 for the lining. But I don't have enough fabric, so I'm going to use my bias tape to pipe my neckline. For the flare part of this dress, I'll be cutting out a 90 degrees flare. It's very simple. So my work table is not that wide, so I'll be showing you guys how I folded my fabric using this paper. So I just folded it into two like this. That is all. It's very simple. When you fold your fabric like this, you realize that one side of the fabric is shorter than the other side. So what you are going to do is to join that part after cutting out. So that is all you have to do. So after folding my fabric, what I'm going to do is to place my waist measurement on the upper part of this fabric. So you are just going to cut out. That part is going to serve as your waist. So I'm going to do that on my fabric. So my waist measurement divided by 2, because my fabric is folded into 2, is 14 inches. I'm going to add that to this skirt part because I want to have a slit at the front, and I'm also going to join this fabric with 1 inch. So I'm going to place 16 inches. So look at the way I'm placing my measurement. So once I get 16 inches, I'm going to mark that into a straight line. So guys, I've gone ahead to do that, and this is my waistline. I'm going to cut it out. So the next thing I'll do is to place my tape there and mark the length of my dress. So you just have to mark it all the way around. Like I said, my table is not that wide, so that is why you guys did not see when I was marking the length of my dress. But the length of this flare that I have on the table is 45 inches. So to get the full length of your dress, minus your half length from the full length. After minusing your half length, what you have is what you use to cut out your flare. So that is how to do it. So the next thing I'll do is to line my upper bodice. I will place my lining on my upper bodice like this, right sides facing each other, and I'll go ahead and pin all the way around. So like I said before, if you're a beginner, pin one side, go ahead and sew it, and then come back and pin the other side and sew it. And if you are working with a chiffon fabric, I will advise that you do it one after the other. So after sewing, you realize that all the rough edges that we have is going to be inside the lining. Nothing is going to show outside. Like you can see, everything is all nice and clean. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew. So after sewing, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my sleeves. So I later realized that my camera was not recording when I cut out my sleeves, so I want to show you guys what I did. So my fabric is folded into two. I placed the armhole area of my pattern paper on the opened area of my fabric, that is the fabric for my sleeves, and I went ahead to trim the armhole out. So I'm going to go ahead and fold in half an inch on the upper part and half an inch on the down part to create a casing for my elastic band to pass through. Yeah, so that's all I did for the sleeves. So the length of my sleeves is 11 inches and the wideness is 60 inches. So for the back, I've already gone ahead to turn my neckline using my bias, and this is my sleeves also. I've already gone ahead to pass my elastic band through the up and through the base. So this is what I have. The next thing I'll do is to join my sleeves to the upper bodice. So I'll go ahead and place the armhole area on the sleeves on the armhole area of the top, just like this. I'll pin all the way around. I'll repeat the same thing for the front and the back, and I'll go ahead and stitch. So guys, after joining the sleeves, the next thing I'll do is to use the 1.5 inch for that I left to my stitching allowance. I'm going to use it to shape the upper part of this top. So you can see me placing my bust measurement and my waist measurement, and I'm going to pin. After doing that, I will sew. So before you do this, use a gather stitch to hold your zipper allowance together. It's going to make it easier for you to shape your dress. After doing that, I'll lose the zipper allowance. That is why I said you should use a loosed stitch. It will be easier for you to open it up after shaping the upper part of your dress. So this is what we have. So the next thing I'll do is to bring the skirt part. So like I said before, I want to add a slit to the skirt. If you don't want to add a slit, you can go ahead and skip this step. So to do that, I'm going to place my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4 inches. I'm going to place 4 inches like this till I get to the end of this flare. I'm going to be connecting the lines like this. After doing that, I'll go ahead and slash through this line. So I'm going to slash through just one piece of fabric, not the two. So be careful while doing this. After cutting it out like this, I'm going to place it right sides facing each other. Remember, I left 1 inch for my slit, so I'm going to place the fabric right sides facing each other, and I'll use the 1 inch to join it together. So if you don't understand, just look at what I am doing. So I'm placing my fabric back where I just cut out and placing it back, and I'll sew it in by 1 inch. So at this point you can go ahead and determine how open you want your slit to be. So for mine, I measured from my waistline, which is the top of this fabric, to 15 inches. So I just sewed 15 inches and I left the rest part of this fabric open. That is how open I want my slit to be. So I'm going to sew from there to meet the 15 inches. So after doing that, this is what I have. So we already have our slit. So all I'm going to do now is to iron it out, and then I'll fold it inward and then I'll stitch, but I'll be doing that later. So the next thing I'll do is to fold the flay into 2 equal halves, and I'll notch the middle point. After doing that, I'll also bring the upper bodice, I'll fold it into 2 equal halves, and I'll also notch the middle point. So I'm going to place the two notched area together and I'm going to pin all the way around. After pinning, I'll go ahead and sew. So guys, after sewing, the next thing I'll do is to go ahead and sew in my zipper. I'll also go ahead and iron my slit and also sew it, and then I'll hem the base. Yeah, that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.